In the vast, silent theater of the cosmos, where stars are born and galaxies fade, there are moments that echo through eternity. Moments so profound, they carve themselves into the memory of humankind. This is one such story, a tale of a people cornered by despair, a leader burdened by faith, and a sea that held its breath. Imagine a world painted in shades of fear. The Israelites, a nation newly freed, found themselves trapped. Behind them, the thunder of chariots, the might of an empire seeking to reclaim what it had lost. Pharaoh's army, a storm of bronze and fury, closing in with every beat of a terrified heart. Before them, an impassable barrier, the vast, churning waters of the Red Sea. There was no escape. To the left, a barren desert. To the right, impassable mountains. Hope, it seemed, had withered and died on the salt-laced wind. Cries of panic filled the air, a symphony of desperation. Were there no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? They cried out to Moses. Their words were daggers, each one piercing the heart of the man who had led them out of bondage. Moses stood there, a solitary figure against the encroaching darkness. He felt the weight of every soul, the crushing burden of their terror, their doubt, their fragile freedom. In that moment of ultimate despair, Moses did not look back at the approaching army, nor did he look at the panicked faces of his people. He looked inward, and then upward. He turned to the source of his strength, the silent promise that had guided him this far. He raised his staff, not as a weapon, but as a conduit of faith. It was an act of pure, unyielding trust in a power greater than the sea, mightier than any earthly king. And then the universe paused. A wind began to blow, not a gentle breeze, but a mighty, purposeful gale that tore at the sea's surface. It was a wind that seemed to carry the very breath of creation. All night it howled, a divine song pushing back the waters. The sea, that ancient, untamable force of nature, began to obey. It recoiled, pulling away from the shore, not in chaos, but with a strange and reverent symmetry. Slowly, miraculously, a path began to form where none had existed. The waters rose on either side, standing like walls of liquid crystal, shimmering under the pale moonlight. The seabed, once hidden in dark depths, lay exposed a dry, walkable road to the heart of the impossible. It was a corridor of salvation, flanked by towering waves held in suspended animation. The people stared, their cries of fear turning to gasps of awe. Could this be real? Was this a dream born of desperation? Moses, his face etched with a serene, unwavering calm, turned to his people. His voice, steady and clear, cut through the wind. "Do not be afraid," he declared. "Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today." He was the first to step onto the hallowed ground, his sandals touching the damp earth that was, moments ago, the bottom of the sea. One by one, they followed. The old, the young, the frail, the strong. They walked through the valley of the deep, their shadows dancing on the watery walls. Above them, the stars watched in silent witness. In the water, fish swam past, their eyes like tiny, curious lanterns in the translucent abyss. It was a procession not of refugees, but of pilgrims, walking a path paved by faith itself. They were no longer just a people fleeing. They were a testament to the power of belief. As the last Israelite stepped onto the far shore, the ground rumbled once more. Pharaoh's army, blinded by rage and arrogance, did not hesitate. They charged into the passage, their chariots thundering onto the seabed, confident in their own power. They saw only a pathway, not the miracle that held it open. They failed to understand that this was not a trick of nature, but a sacred space opened by a will far beyond their own. Once his people were safe, Moses looked back at the advancing army. He raised his staff one last time. The wind died as suddenly as it had begun. The silence that followed was heavy, pregnant with destiny. And then, with a roar that shook the very foundations of the earth, the walls of water collapsed. The sea, released from its divine command, rushed back to reclaim its domain. It was a deluge of justice, a liquid avalanche that swallowed the pride and power of an empire in a single, final, thunderous embrace. As the sun rose, its golden rays illuminated a tranquil sea. The waters were calm, as if nothing had happened. But on the far shore, a nation stood reborn. They had walked through the heart of despair and emerged into the dawn of a new beginning. They had not just crossed a sea. They had crossed a threshold between slavery and freedom, between doubt and profound faith. So we ask, was it the power of one man's belief that parted the waters? Or was it the hand of God reaching down to carve a path for his people? Perhaps the two are not so different. Perhaps true faith is not merely a passive belief, but an active force, a key that unlocks the miraculous potential of the universe. It is the bridge between our human limitations and the boundless possibilities of the divine. This story lives on not just in ancient texts, but in the heart of anyone who has ever faced an impassable sea. It reminds us that even when we are trapped, with despair closing in, there is a power within and beyond us. It teaches us that sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply to stand firm, to lift our gaze, and to trust that a path will be made where there is no path. For in the darkest moments, when all hope seems lost, a miracle is waiting to be born. The sea is always ready to part for those who dare to believe. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to God Story Reborn for more tales of light and rebirth. May you find the strength to face your own sea.